All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Jem Fuller. Jem, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Mate, I'm really excited to be here.
Same. I am looking forward to this. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Jen because we got connected by somebody who's a pretty awesome individual. And Jennifer Hill, I'll tell you, man, that girl, she's got a heart of gold, man. And she was the one that introduced you and I. And without her, heck, Jen, we would have probably never even met you and I.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah, 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 absolutely. And you're right, she does have a heart of gold, and she has such an expansive mind and heart combined,
yes.
and such a big, beautiful awareness of the bigger picture of humanity, and her ability to connect people is next level. I don't think I've actually met anyone who connects people as remarkably well as she does.
Yeah, she is really good at it for sure. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So Jennifer, if you happen to be listening to this, thank you so much for introducing Gemini. We just really appreciate it. And so what I want to do is I want to start by just kind of having a excuse me, I'm gonna take a drink of my water real quick, having a conversation with you, Jim, and just kind of digging in. And I definitely want to talk about your business and what you do and who you serve and what inspires you. But I want to go back before that. I want to go back to, before you were an entrepreneur. And when did you first realize that you had entrepreneurial tendencies? And how
Yeah.
did you get into becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess my entrepreneurial tendencies go back way back before business. And it goes back to at the time it was, I kind of saw myself as being anti-establishment,
Okay.
right? Now, and that word has connotations of being, bucking against the system and pushing back against the status quo and whatever. But as a teenager, I just wanted to get out and get as far away from the normal model as possible. I never wanted to do the normal way. That was just inbuilt in me. And so when we finished high school and all of my friends went to university, I took off and just went traveling around the world and ended up traveling around the world for most of my 20s and into my early 30s,
Okay.
just wanting to explore what wasn't normal. So that's an entrepreneurial kind of thing, right? I'm going to go
Yeah,
my
for
own way. I'm
sure.
going to figure out a new way to go. And then I became a dad, got married, became a dad, and then had kids to feed. So I was like, oh, wow, I've got to get a regular job. So I did that and ended up in that corporate world and wearing a suit and tie, which was hilarious because I'm covered in tattoos and I used to wear dreadlocks and have a long beard and barefoot and wandering around the world as a that kind of thing. And so my family and friends all said to me, "Who are you and what have you done with Jem?" when they saw me in the suit. Anyway, I played that game for 8 years. Made a lot of money, did that whole thing, and then had the classic midlife. People call it a midlife crisis. For me, it was a midlife awakening. Actually, it
Okay.
was a midlife remembering. I kind of remembered a whole bunch of stuff that I'd figured out when I was younger and had forgotten in that corporate, um, you know, race where you just month on month trying to grow net profit and um, that whole world. And anyway, so when I lost my job, lost my marriage, lost my house, lost all the stuff, I kind of came to this point of starting all over again, so to speak, and knew that I wanted to start my own coaching practice. I'd already known that. And I was in the deep end and I had a couple of kids to feed and a debt to pay off. So I jumped both feet in and started my own business. And this was now 13 years ago,
Okay.
and haven't looked back. It hasn't all been easy. There's been a lot of grit behind the overnight success, quote unquote. It's
Right.
been a lot of hard work and a lot of grit and a lot of sleepless nights where you don't know how you're going to pay the bills and etc. But certainly it's been a path of complete calling, like I've just known I have to do this. I know this is why I'm here, and it's grown even more and more into what it is today. And it's certainly It's certainly a calling, and so entrepreneurs know this, right? You're an entrepreneur, so you get to write your own hours, you get to write your own ideas, you get to be creative, and you get to go out there. That's great. Take a holiday when you want. But on the other side of things, there's no sick day and sick pay or holiday pay or superannuation getting paid for you by an organization. So, there's this balance between the two. But when you feel called, to your own sense of mission or purpose, when you know why you're here,
Yeah.
you can't pretend you don't know that and just go off and get a 9 to 5 job again. You've got, you're on mission, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, Jim, have you, since you got out of the corporate world, how often do you find yourself wearing suits these days?
never. Oh, weddings and funerals maybe, but I
Okay.
but I don't wear a tie. The
Uh-huh.
tie is a ridiculous thing to me. It's like, why? That's what a ridiculous fashion item that we became indoctrinated to wear this thing that chokes us up around our neck. It's like shutting down our communication, shutting
Yeah,
down
right.
our expression, shutting down our. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But no, I don't wear a tie, but I will don a suit occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like you, there was a period time in my life, not nearly as long as in your life, that it was a couple years where I was wearing suits. And when I got out of that, I'm like, man, I'm never wearing a suit again. And now, granted, I'll dress up for weddings or whatever. And I do like dressing up in a tux and stuff. I do
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
look sharp. But
Yeah. That's
day to
right.
day wearing suits, no, thank you, man. I mean,
No.
I'm good in a t-shirt, and I don't mind wearing a button-up shirt, nice button-up shirt too. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's me far more than you won't catch me in suits, man.
No,
So,
man. No, I went to a private school, and I don't know what you call them in the States, but here in Australia, a private school, where you're wearing a shirt and a tie and a blazer, like a
yeah,
suit coat, every day to school
yeah,
as a teenager, every
yeah.
single day, and your socks have to be pulled up; they can't fall down. You've got to, and your shirt has to be tucked in, and your top button has to be done up, and it's all very prim and proper. And when I finished high school, man, I couldn't get far enough away from it.
I'm with you. I did go
Yeah.
to private school my last 2 years of high school. It wasn't a school like that. I didn't have to dress. I just dressed normal and stuff.
Right.
But uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but uh, I would have been the same exact way. I'm like, let me out of here, man.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
there's something to be said. It's you start looking at that kind of stuff, and it's like no wonder we became entrepreneurs because we're just like we don't want to put up with that BS.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't want to conform.
that's right.
It's interesting, man, because when I was younger, it was, I just want to be free. I want to adventure and discover the world, and I want to be free. I don't want to be indoctrinated. I don't want to be told by a dogma of how things are and how I need to behave.
Yeah.
I just want to get away from that. And now, in my mid 50s, I look at how it plays out for me. And the pros on the pros and cons list, the pros are that I've developed methodologies in my coaching and my facilitation and in my retreats and in the work that I do that are completely unique. They're a unique flavor of existing wisdom, right? That already exists, but it's a gem way, right? And when it works for someone, it really works,
Yeah.
and people can't find it anywhere else. So I'm my own micro niche, right? You guys say niche, my own micro niche, and I don't feel like I've got any competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really have a complete abundance mindset because there's no one else that does it the way I do it.
That's
And
right.
if my way is the way that works for you, you're not going to find it anywhere else, right?
That's
So
right.
that's been wonderful. But on the cons side of the balance sheet is that I find it really hard to just follow proven methods, right? When someone goes, Jem, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We've figured out how to build a funnel and get leads and get business. Just do this. And I have a real resistance to following these proven methods,
Mhm.
because of this kind of innate drive in me to do it my own way,
Yeah.
right? Which means that it makes it harder for me in some ways, but look, it is just the way I am. So.
Yeah. Well, and just because something works well for somebody else doesn't mean that's going to work well for us, and doesn't mean we're going to get the same results using their thing as they got with it either. And I mean, hosting this podcast, for example, we have hosted. I've hosted the $1 Million Relationships podcast for 3.5 years now. We've
Yeah.
released over 300 episodes. It has been hands down the most rewarding and impactful thing I've done as an entrepreneur in 30 years.
Yeah.
And even at that, even though my experience has been so amazing, and this podcast is such an incredible tool in so many ways. I mean, it just puts me in touch with amazing entrepreneurs. It expands my network. I'm a connector and conduit of trust for entrepreneurs. And
Yeah.
so this has, I mean, the recordings of these, I use these recordings when making introductions. And I'll tell you, you
Right.
talk about putting some horsepower behind making some introductions. And
Yeah.
even at all that, you know, I would be the last guy to say, well, because I have had such an amazing experience hosting a podcast, you should do it too and stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's not necessarily true at all.
Yeah. True.
And
Yeah.
so we got to figure out what works for us and what flows for us.
Yeah.
And when we just, we can figure that thing out. Now we're in just alignment with us and who we are and how we want to show up. And like now that's empowering right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely. And we can take, I've always taken, bits and pieces
yeah,
from what people have figured out and put them together in a way that feels good to me,
yeah,
And it was the same when I was wandering around the world, quote unquote, seeking enlightenment, all through my 20s, but really just pondering life and questioning religion and spirituality and existential matters and who am I and what is
yeah,
this universe and is there a purpose and why are we here? All these questions were really intriguing for me right through my 20s. Spent a lot of time on the Indian subcontinent, India and Pakistan, Tibet, Nepal, Bangladesh, and also through Southeast Asia. And people ask me, did you ever have a guru? And I said, oh, no, 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 no. Yeah, I never felt called to just have one teacher, one guru, because then I'm only learning through one source. For me, everyone I came across was potentially a guru for me in some way. I could be sitting down with a woman who was begging on the streets and sitting down next to her and sharing a cup of tea with her and, you know, maybe bringing her some food and sitting down in her space. And in that moment, she's a guru for me. I'm learning from her
yeah,
something. So in that same way, if you transpose that into our conversation around entrepreneurship and learning how to be successful in whatever it is that you're doing, we take bits and pieces from lots of different sources, and then we, like alchemy, right? When we put
yeah,
them together in a way that works for us,
yeah,
and if you're good at it, then you get to you get to be successful, which is a whole other conversation of the definition of what that means for people. But you get to be successful in shorthand, you get to put food on the table doing something that you love that is benefiting the greater good,
yeah.
right? You get to do that in your way, in a way that's enjoyable, in a way that you wake up most days, and most of what you do, you actually enjoy doing.
That's right.
There's little bits that are not so enjoyable. You might have to go and, balance a spreadsheet or something if you have to, or whatever. But most of what you do, you enjoy doing,
Yeah,
and it's benefiting the greater good, and you're getting paid to do it.
yeah,
Right? So, yeah.
yeah. It's a pretty good life.
That's a good life, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what is life look for you like for you now? I mean, so what do you do for your business? Who do you serve and what inspires you most about the work you get to do, Jem?
Yeah, sure. So my natural behavioral style, if you went to good old DISC, or if you went to any of those behavioral profiling tools, my natural behavioral style is I love variety. I get bored easily. I love to be stimulated and I love lots of things going on. And I've certainly created that life for myself. So for example, I usually wake at around 5 in the morning, 5:30. And so there's my morning ritual of meditation, preparation, and then, showering, affirmation, getting ready for the day, setting myself up. And then I might have a 2 hour, say from 6 till 8, I might be in a 2 hour masterclass, global masterclass with a group of people from around the world. And then I might be coaching one of my clients. So my bread and butter retainer clients are business owners, and I coach them on leadership.
Okay.
So I'm not a business coach. I'm not teaching you how to run a successful business. I'm a leadership and communication coach. So I help my clients communicate with their people
Okay.
more effectively, right?
Okay.
And with their client, with everyone, right? So then I might coach a client, then I'll be interviewed on a podcast, then I'll be running a workshop for anywhere up to 200 people for a client doing, facilitating.
Mhm.
And then I will be designing something to sit in with our nonprofit. And then I'll be building out our next retreat in the Himalaya in India. And then I'll be designing an online program, and then I might coach another client, and then I'll exercise, and then I'll go home and take the dog for a walk. Right now, that's an average normal day for me.
Okay.
So I've got all of these different pieces
Lot
that
of variety.
lot of variety, man. And then the last question that you asked me, which was what inspires me most at the moment, and that is most definitely the global nonprofit mission and vision that I'm on at the
Okay.
moment. Do you mind if I give you a little bit of a
No,
story?
please do. Please
Yeah,
do.
yeah. So in the 90s, when I was wandering around barefoot and dreadlocked, wandering around India, meditating and wondering about life, I stumbled across this family who live in a temple above a village in the Himalayan mountains in northwest India.
Okay.
Long story short, this was back in 1998, so almost 30 years ago. They ended up kind of adopting me, unofficially adopting me. I lived with them for a long period of time. They became my second family, and to this day they are. And back then I knew I was going to run retreats there. I didn't know what it looked like. Jump forward, 2013, started running conscious leadership retreats in the Himalayan mountains up there. And we take people adventure trekking and off the beaten track and running these transformational programs. Over the years, my brother, my Himalayan brother, one year he said to me, Jem, I want to give you and Talia is my partner, I want to give you and Talia some land to build on. So
Mhm.
he gave us 2 acres of land on the grounds of the temple in the forests on the side of this beautiful Himalayan mountain. And he thought I was going to build a home for us.
Okay.
But that was never on the cards. As soon as he said that, I saw it straight away. It's a non-profit meditation retreat center where we bring great minds together from around the world and we collect our consciousness sitting together in meditation, breaking bread together, walking in the mountains together, and we put some of the biggest problems that humanity is facing into the circle and see what arises in terms of solutions, collective solutions, right? That was my first vision. And the money that gets generated through this retreat center goes to providing education for the kids in the villages.
Okay.
So that
Wow.
was the vision 7 years ago.
Mhm.
The vision has now grown. We've got the land. We've got the nonprofit set up based out of the States. We've got the 501(c)(3). I'm literally
Okay.
about to go out and raise the money now to build the center. But the center is going to become the center of a global movement that I'm putting together. And we are going to sponsor senior leaders from 5 sectors in different countries to come through a transformational program where they are then now intrinsically motivated to go back to their country, back to their sector, and to embed a framework of professional behaviors that are through a lens of, dare I say, through a lens of love, through a lens of compassion, care, kindness, human connection, empathy, rapport, all of this human stuff, right?
Mhm.
The reason I'm feeling really called to do this is because humanity stands at the crossroads right now. We're teetering on the balance of going either towards more division, more fear, more mistrust, more war, more this, right? Oh dear, that's right here, right now. Or we can work together as a collective tide of good people, because most of us are good people, and we can help tip the scales in the right direction towards a reconnection, a remembering, a re of community, like coming back together again, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hoping to help do. And I believe that we need to embed pro forma into systems so that systemically people are incentivized to do what they do from a place of love rather than fear.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my bigger picture. And to do that, I've brought together 12 founders of global movements that are fueled by love. Already, these movements are global and doing great work. Most of them are non-profit, some are for-profit, positive impact. And I've brought them together. We are the Center of Love Alliance. We had our first meeting last month. We've got our next meeting next week. We've added up already, we're across the globe as a collective. We've
Okay.
added up already that we've directly positively impacted 15 million lives already. And I've
Wow.
suggested to them that we 10x that in the next 3 years. So we're going for 150 million lives to directly positively impact in the next 3 years. And one of our members is speaking at the Vatican this month, in a few weeks. She's speaking at the Vatican um, as a keynote speaker at a global humanitarian conference. And she's going to mention the Center of Love Alliance and that we're here and we're on a mission
That's
to go out and
awesome.
combine our forces and be the tide that lifts all the boats. So you can tell by the tone in my voice, mate, and by the look on my face when I'm sharing this with you, but this is what inspires me the most at the moment. And I wake up dreaming about it. And I'm in between every client and every piece of money making that I'm doing, in between all of that, all I'm thinking about and focusing on is this non-profit global mission. So,
Yeah. Well, and the thing is you just keep putting that out there. In fact, I was sitting here making a note that, you were getting ready to start raising money and stuff. How much, I'm just curious, how much are you guys going to be raising?
so we're going to go out and raise 5 million.
5 million? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
1 million. 1 million straight off the bat will build the Center of Love Meditation Retreat Center,
Mhm.
and it'll staff it for a year. That's the 1 million. We've got the land already.
Okay.
We've got the architects, we've got the lawyers, we've got the building team, we've got the engineers, we've got the NGO set up, we've got it all ready to go. So as soon as someone says, "Do you know what, Jem, let's go over to your land, let's sit there, let's bless the land, and let's start breaking the ground, and let's build this place, right? We're ready to go." So that's 1 million. 2 million then we'll build out our team and start to build out the curriculum, start to build out the pro forma that we're going to put into these 5 sectors around the world and start to go and gather leaders. And then 2 million on top of that, we're going to build 6 hubs around the world. So we don't need to fly everyone to the Himalayan mountains. Only the special ones get to come to the Himalaya. No, I'm joking. Anyone can come, but we'll have 6 hubs around the world, 6 continents. And but the one in the Himalaya will be the mothership, if you know what I mean. It'll be the
Okay.
headquarters.
Okay.
It's a really, but we're going to have 6 hubs around the world, and we're going to educate leaders around the world. So that's the 5 million plan. And
Okay.
then my big vision is that we find a family or an organization or someone of high net worth who wants to set up a $50 million endowment fund, and then the proceeds from the endowment fund will fuel the 12 movements that are working together in the Center of Love Alliance to globally be a tide that lifts all boats.
Okay. Okay.
That's the big thing. And the people that are sitting in this Center of Love Alliance with me, we've got my friend Amitabh in India, whose charity is one of the top 10 biggest charities in India. He's put 7 million kids through school, his charity, right?
Wow.
They're
Wow.
massive. Another friend of mine, Vicky, she's got Joy of Mum. She's got over 3 million mums in her community, and she's all heart. She's all driven about how do I help these mums,
Yeah.
right? And then another friend of mine, Maxine, has got a global platform with people all around the world, and she's started um, bringing speakers into classrooms in high schools globally. So the teachers can go through a menu and pick any number of thousands of speakers to speak on anything, and they zoom into the virtual classroom, and the kids can listen to this person share
Oh,
their story. And she's
okay.
on a mission to bring 1 million speakers into 1 million classrooms around the world, right?
Wow.
Um, and then there's Scarlett sadly lost one of her sons in the Sandy Hook massacre
Okay.
12 years ago. And off the back of that, she was compelled to go and build Choose Love, which is an in-school curriculum around teachers teaching kids how to be and communicate and be with each other through the lens of love and compassion and all these beautiful things. And her program's been downloaded into 132 countries around the world. Right?
Wow.
So this is an example of the 12 different movements that
Yep.
I've brought together,
Yeah.
and they're now in communication with each other, going, how can we multiply each other's
Yes. Yeah.
impact?
Yeah.
So that's the $50 million endowment fund that I'm envisaging.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
see how we go with that.
That is awesome. Well, there's no hiding your passion for this, Jem. So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
well, so now that we've got some context set here, I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I'm going
Mm.
to reiterate the question I want to ask you for the benefit of our listeners. So, Jim, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons. And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you can follow the chain of introductions all the way back to things, can't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to, in mid chain, I'm going to pick one person that's been pivotal,
Okay.
and then we can explore backwards and forwards what happened
Sure.
after, before and after that. But the one person I'm going to pick is Brandon Fong.
Okay.
Now, I don't know whether you've met Brandon yet.
I know Brandon. Yes.
Right. Yes. So I was introduced to Brandon, and I know exactly who introduced me. Brandon had me on his podcast. Wow, I'm going to say it might even be 3 years ago now. Somewhere between 2 to 3 years ago now, Brandon had me on his podcast. Amazing. What an amazing guy. He read my whole book. I mean, who has time to read every single guest's book? He read my whole book. He had earmarked in the book different bits he wanted to talk about. We hit it off. The love just was instant, loved him, and we became friends. And then he called me up just on 2 years ago. He rang me up and he said, "Hey, Jem, I've got this idea. It's called Curiosity Island. I'm going to create this Curiosity Island, and I'm going to invite people in. It's not a mastermind. It's a group of people, awesome people who are well connected, who leverage with each other to take it all to the next level." And I said, "I'm in. Where can I send you some money?" So I was the third or I think the third or fourth person to jump in with him on this Curiosity Island idea. And that was almost 2 years ago. Now, Curiosity Island has become a wonderful, wonderful group of, I think there's about 26 of us now. He keeps it very small and boutique. And the work that we're doing is incredible and it's about to explode. And through being on the island, my second TEDx talk came out of this. My second book came out of this. The whole vision I've got for the Center of Love came out of this. My high ticket retreat, Meeting on the Mountain, which is in the Himalayas, and it's a high ticket experience for exited founders. That came out of this. The connections that I've had came out of this. The last keynote I did in California came out of, like, so much has come out of it,
Wow.
right? In
Wow.
fact, I think I might be wrong on this, but I'd be pretty safe bet that Brandon introduced me to Jennifer Hill.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And
Oh,
then the Jennifer Hill world explodes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's Brandon. And I was introduced to Brandon, and I can track this all the way back. But Jana, a friend of ours, Jana, introduced me to Brandon, and I got introduced to Jana by an AI that was built by a friend of mine here in Australia. And he has his community. When you go on his podcast, you become part of his community. And
Okay.
his community, he built an AI that just randomly introduces people. And I got randomly introduced to this girl, Jana, in Canada. No, sorry, not in Canada. She's up in Colorado. And we met, hit it off. She introduced me to Brandon, hit it off. So that's how far that goes back.
Wow. Wow. I actually met Brandon, I don't know how many years ago, number of years ago, because I was in Joe Polish's Genius Network group for 12 years. And
Wow.
one of the meetings, I ended up getting seated right next to Brandon. And,
Uh-huh.
and here's this young kid. I think he was probably, I don't know, 21 or maybe even younger than that.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and I was just blown away by the
Yeah.
fact that he was at, because it's 25,000 a year to be in Genius Network.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
blown away that this young kid was sitting next to me, and I started talking to him. I was like, you know what? I don't remember what all I was doing at 21, but it certainly wasn't in groups like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just so impressed that he was there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so yeah, we became good friends and stuff. And that was long before the curiosity. He hadn't done the curiosity. Well, he's only been doing that for a few years and stuff.
Only two, just on almost 2 years. Yeah.
Almost 2 years.
Curiosity
Okay.
Island. Yeah.
Okay.
But his podcast before that, so his podcast now is Beyond Curious, but before that it was called Seven Figure Millennials.
Yes. Yes.
But his guest list, like yours, is impressive. He's had some amazing people on
Yeah.
his show, and
Yeah.
he's just so bright and so genuine. and there's so much heart in there. So he has this beautiful combination of the three of them. So
Yeah.
shout outs to you, Brandon. We're singing your praises, mate.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I want to, what is an example of a situation? I'm sure you come up with a number of examples. I just want to challenge you to come up with one because you already kind of alluded to them. But what's an example of a situation where you personally, Jim, you got to make a really substantial impact? And maybe in the moment, maybe it even surprised you a little bit that you were like, wow, look what just happened. And you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with Brandon. What's an example of something like that?
Okay, well I can link that back to Brandon for sure. So so Brandon introduced me to um, Suzanne Goldstein, and
Okay.
Suzanne Goldstein introduced me to a mutual friend now, a guy called Scott in America, who's a very successful businessman and coach in America. And I jumped on a call with Scott, and we had only half an hour in a Zoom call. Didn't know each other, jumped on a call. At the end of that call, he was like, "What do you need?" And I said, "Well, I'm building the charity, and I need 10. I'm stuck. I've got no money. I need 10 grand to get finished building the charity." And he said, "Done." I said, "What?" He said, "I got it." I went, "What?" And he caught me in this moment, and I cried. It was early in the morning. It was like 5:30 in the morning for me. I was still waking up. That's my excuse. But no, it was genuinely emotional. We had a beautiful connection, and he just said yes. And the generosity of his heart caught me, and I was emotional, and I cried. And he said also, "I want you to meet this man. His name's Amitabh, and I'm going to make an introduction for you now." And I went, "Okay." Little did I know. So I'm going to give you the bullet point version of the story. So then I jump on a call with this guy who I had no idea who he was. I didn't look him up. I don't tend to look people up. If the quality of the introduction's high, I just jump on the call and find
Yep.
out about it. So I
Same.
jumped on this call with this guy, Amitabh. He's in India. I love India. India is my second home. I jumped on the call with him the day before I was flying to Cali to go and speak at this event. He's in the back of a cab in India. We jump on a call. We get along like a house on fire. I'm speaking a bit of Hindi with him, and he's laughing at me because I love India so much. And then at the end, and so Amitabh runs this massive charity. I mentioned him earlier in this call with you. And I said to him, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm on my way to the airport. I'm flying via Bombay to San Francisco." And I said, "When are you going to be in San Fran?" And he said, "Oh, in 6 days from now." And I said, "Me too." And then I said to him, "Hey, you wouldn't happen to be free on this night, would you?" And he said, "That is the only night I'm free." And I said, "Hey, do you want to go for dinner?" And Amitabh said to me, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to go for dinner, but can we go for Indian? Because by then I'll be missing my home country and I want to go for Indian." And I said, "Sure, we'll go for Indian." So 6 days later, after a Zoom call, I walk out of the foyer of my hotel in downtown San Fran, 2 blocks down on the same street, and our hotels were already booked on the same street. And I walk into the foyer of his hotel, and he's standing there in the foyer. And I go up and give him a big Aussie bear hug.
Yeah.
And Amitabh says to me, "Actually, Jem, I've been eating Indian every day. Can we please go for pizza?" And I said, "Sure, dude. Let's go for pizza." So we go for pizza. Now, I'm sitting there just asking Amitabh, "Tell me about you and what are you doing?" Da, 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 da. And I am blown away by this guy. When he was 22 years old, he got offered a job on Wall Street. He'd been to Yale or somewhere, one of the big universities in America. He had his degree, been offered a job on Wall Street, and he said no. And he went back to India, to his home city of Delhi, and he started a charity on his own to provide education for kids who were growing up on the streets. In the last 21 years, he's built 7,000 schools, put more than 7 million kids through school. It's like impressive, right? And he was in San Francisco for a private audience with Bill Gates because Bill Gates had just written him a massive check. And we're in the middle of eating pizza, and his phone rings, and he excuses himself and says, "Jem, do you mind if I get this phone call? It's the owner of Mercedes-Benz India." And I'm like, "You better get that phone call, mate," right? So he gets the phone call, and he comes off the phone and says, "That's another 4 schools built." The guy is tremendously successful at charity, but also he's a beautiful man, beautiful soul, beautiful spirit. So we're sitting there, and at the end of the pizza, he says, "Tell me what you're up to." And I said, "Amitabh, I feel so humble next to you. You know, our second home is in Himachal Pradesh in India, up in the Himalaya. We sponsor a few kids through school. We built a small school there. We ran out of money. The school's not working now because we've run out of money to fund it. But we sponsor a handful of kids through school." And I said, "I feel very humble next to you." And he said to me, "Jem, it's not the number of children that you help that matters, it's the purity of your heart that matters." And I said to him, "Oh, that's lovely. That's very nice." And he said to me, "Jem, any child that you know up in your village in the mountains and all the villages who meets these criteria," and he gave me some criteria, "who meets these criteria, we will fund all of their schooling 100% from this day on." I said, "What?" And he said, "Yes, blank check," he said to me. And I said, "Can I call my brother in the Himalaya now?" And so I called my brother Papu on WhatsApp. He answers his phone. And I told this to him, and he said, "You mean my daughter's educations are covered?" And I said, "Yes, Papu, but not just your children. All the children we can find in the villages who meet this criteria." He said, "Jem, I already know 100 families."
Wow.
And Amitabh said to me, "Jem, blank check." Right? So now that was back in March of this year. Amitabh now is in my Center of Love Alliance. We work together. We're getting as many kids through school as we can. I've donated my meditation course to them. We've had hundreds of children go through my mindfulness course. Hopefully, it'll be thousands. And I went back to my hotel room that night after pizza and I called my wife in Australia, Talia, and I said, "Baby, I know the real reason that I came to the States, and it wasn't to speak at that conference. It was to have pizza with Amitabh, because now there's hundreds, possibly thousands of families that are going to have education for their children." And I cried. And so when you ask me what's a meeting that has come because of meeting Brandon Fong, I
Yeah.
can track that back there.
That is such a powerful story, Jim.
It's
I'm
great,
just
isn't
like, wow, wow. I mean, how awesome is that? And you're right. That's why you had scheduled that trip, was to meet with him. You
it?
didn't realize it when you scheduled that trip. And
Yeah,
but this kind of thing happens all the time when we're open to it, when we're open to being that vessel and being that steward, and
yeah,
just being that conduit, if you will, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And whether you want to call it God, the universe, what have you, just works through us, and we get to bring just our gifts and our abilities to the table for being that conduit and being that connector and stuff. And man, what a beautiful story that is. I mean, that I was just hanging on every word you were sharing, and that was
yeah.
awesome. That was
Thanks,
awesome.
man. And it's important on a personal level for me. I mean, obviously, the story is about serving the greater good and others, but for me personally, it's such an important story because it's one of many stories where God, the universe, source, call it whatever you want, consciousness, call it whatever you want. It's communicating to me and saying, "Jem, you're on the right path.
Yeah,
Right? Keep going.
yeah,
Here's I'm just going to drop this here for you so you can go, oh wow, that was divine, right?
yeah,
You're on the right path, keep going. Because I and this is maybe a bit of an overshare, I don't mind, but because I've channeled all of my resource into the nonprofit stuff and into my partner's community that she's built here in Australia, and I've channeled all of my resource into that, we are hand to mouth still. We get to the end of the month and we're juggling to pay rent.
mhm,
And I know it won't be like that forever. I know the abundance is there, but right now the reality is that we're struggling to pay rent at the end of each month. But I know I'm on the right path because the universe goes, "It's all right, I got you." Like just keeps giving me these beautiful synchronicity moments,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that's important because and anyone listening to this who knows what it's like when you've got a vision and you feel called to something and it's not easy.
yeah, yeah,
You know it's right, but you gotta navigate stuff to be on mission. And you get these little moments of reassurance from the universe, right? So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Amen. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody that's listening to this, going, Man, Kevin, I really love Jim. I love who he is. I love how he shows up, and maybe some of the stuff that you've shared has just caused him to think, well, maybe I should talk with him. Maybe he might be able to help us, or maybe I know somebody else that he might be able to help, or maybe I've got a connection for him. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's all my name, which is Jem Fuller. And so it's jemfuller.com.
Okay.
It's Jem Fuller on Insta, Jem Fuller on LinkedIn. The some websites to go and check out if you want to look at the global stuff we do is meaningonthemountain.com, meaning as in the meaning of life, meaningonthemountain.com.au. And then the charity website's being built as we speak. So
Okay.
that's coming. You won't find anything there for the next few weeks, but in about a month you will. But anyway, just through gemfuller.com, you can reach out to me, or you want to email me, gem@gemfuller.com. And I'm very accessible, Kevin. I'm not one of these people that is too over flooded with stuff that I can't get back to you.
Yeah.
Especially if you mention, if you say, hey, I heard you on Kevin's podcast, then I'll definitely get back to you. If you random kind of spam me, you might not hear from me.
Yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, Jim, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah. I'd love to share a piece that I find really helpful. And it's this beautiful, radical acceptance of what is, including you as you are right here in this moment. You've made it. You've made it to exactly precisely where you are supposed to be, as you are supposed to be in this moment. Right? Now, that's not to say that you're not going to evolve and grow and expand into potential and stuff in the future, or you might be and you probably will be in a different place in the future. But right here, right now, in this moment, you made it, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and well done.
yeah, yeah,
And you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I know that unequivocally because reality tells us, right? We can argue with reality till we're blue in the face. Reality will always win. 100% of the time, reality wins. And here it is, reality. You're sitting where you're sitting right now. You are the version of you that you are right now. Everything that's happened in your past has happened, and here you are. So I don't know, man. I find some liberation in that acceptance piece.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation and just share from your heart. This has been a really amazing experience. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I am excited to share this with a lot of other entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs. So thanks so much, Jim.
Oh man, thank you, and thank you for your patience, dude. You have a heart the size of Texas and some. You, you are such a lovely guy, and you're so patient. It took us a while to actually end up here. There was tech stuff going on, and all
Yeah, the last time
bits
around we
and
had
pieces.
tech stuff for sure.
Yeah, and prior to that, I'd rescheduled on you a few times, and you just show up. You're such a lovely human being, Kev. So thanks for having me on your show. I really am grateful and much respect and honor to you, brother.
Well, you are so welcome. You are so welcome.